The lights inside the Sepang International Circuit garage don't just illuminate the bikes, they expose the nerves of an entire factory. It was the first morning of the 2026 MotoGP shakedown test, a day that was supposed to be about data logging and heat cycles. But as Toprak Razgatlıoğlu tore past the pit wall on the latest Yamaha V4 prototype, the digital clocks didn't just display a number, they flashed a warning. He wasn't just fast, he was performing at a level that defied Yamaha's own internal simulations. Inside the garage, the usual sound of impact wrenches and chatter died down, replaced by a heavy, suffocating silence. Engineers from Iwata, men who had spent decades perfecting the legendary inline-4 engine, were now staring at telemetry monitors with a look of genuine disbelief. The graphs weren't just spiking, they were entering a territory previously untouched in the post-inline era. What the cameras didn't show was the panicked huddle of senior technicians near the data racks. Every time Toprak exited the pit lane, the telemetry showed an anomaly in corner entry speed and stability under hard braking that shouldn't have been physically possible for a bike in its infancy. No one inside the paddock expected what would unfold next, and it would change everything for him, his team, and the entire 2026 season. For over 20 years, Yamaha's identity was built on one foundation, the inline-4 engine. It was the soul of the M1, a philosophy of corner speed over raw power that brought legends like Valentino Rossi and Jorge Lorenzo to the pinnacle of the world. But by the end of 2025, that soul had become a cage. Yamaha was being bullied on the straights, and the gap to the European V4s had become an unbridgeable chasm. The decision to build a V4 wasn't just a technical change, it was a political execution. Behind closed doors in Japan, a fierce internal rift had broken out between the traditionalists who wanted to evolve the old engine and the revolutionaries who demanded a clean-sheet design. The arrival of Max Bartolini from Ducati was the final nail in the coffin of the old ways. But as the V4 prototype sat in the Sepang garage, the stakes were terrifying. If this project failed, Yamaha's reputation would be shattered beyond repair. They had traded their heritage for a gamble, and the weight of that decision was visible on every face in the garage. Yet the real turning point happened away from the cameras, in a private meeting where Toprak Razgatlıoğlu made a demand that would set the tone for the entire test. He didn't want a safe bike. He wanted a weapon that could hunt. When Toprak Razgatlıoğlu signed with Yamaha, the skeptics were loud. They called him a Superbike specialist, a rider whose aggressive, late-braking style would never translate to the delicate, aerodynamic-heavy world of MotoGP. They expected him to struggle with the transition, to find the limits of the V4 prototype through a series of crashes. Instead, they witnessed a masterclass in adaptation. According to insiders, Toprak didn't just ride the V4, he re-engineered his own DNA. He began shifting the bike's weight with a smoothness that baffled even the lead chassis designers. By utilizing the V4's massive engine braking capacity to stabilize the front end, he found a way to maintain the Yamaha feel while exploiting V4 power. It was a combination that gave Yamaha a new weapon in areas that had traditionally been their greatest weaknesses: fast transitions and high-speed corner exits. But as Toprak's confidence grew, so did the unease of his rivals. This wasn't the learning phase they had anticipated, but what the paddock discovered next shocked everyone. As the shakedown test progressed, a strange phenomenon occurred. The spy war, a staple of MotoGP testing, suddenly intensified. Several rival teams were spotted sending their most senior technicians to stand at specific sectors, specifically sectors 2 and 3. These areas demand a perfect marriage of traction and chassis balance, the very things a brand new V4 prototype is supposed to lack. The data being whispered about in the hospitality units was staggering. Toprak was recording time gains in these sectors that surpassed the benchmarks of the old M1 by nearly half a second. It wasn't just a one-lap wonder. During long runs on non-qualifying tires, the Turk maintained a rhythm that mirrored a full race simulation without any significant drop in performance. This signaled that the Yamaha V4 wasn't just a fast engine, it was a complete racing platform. Speculation emerged that Yamaha's new frame concept had fundamentally altered the bike's character, allowing for a level of tire conservation that the competition had spent years trying to achieve. However, the twist that followed would change the championship narrative entirely. By the time the test moved to the Mandalika circuit, the term secret button began to circulate through the paddock. It wasn't a physical switch on the handlebar, but a revolutionary integration of electronics and engine mapping that seemed to bridge the gap between Toprak's instincts and the bike's mechanical brain. Reports suggested that Yamaha had unlocked a specific torque delivery algorithm that allowed Toprak to short-circuit the usual traction control limitations. On the long straights of Mandalika, the V4 showed a significant increase in top-end speed, but more importantly, it did so without losing composure entering the next corner. Inside the garage, the atmosphere was a mix of intense focus and quiet confidence. Toprak was seen pointing to specific telemetry graphs, his eyes locked with his crew chiefs. It was the moment of convergence, the point where a rider's feeling and the cold, hard numbers of the data screen finally became one. But this breakthrough brought its own set of dangers, as the pressure on the engine components began to reach a breaking point. While the world watched Toprak's times, a different kind of tension was brewing within the Yamaha hierarchy. With the V4 project proving to be a success, the focus shifted to who would lead the development. Rumors suggested deeper tension behind closed doors between the factory regulars and the newcomers. Fabio Quartararo had been the face of Yamaha's struggle for years, but suddenly, the rookie Toprak was the one delivering the technical breakthroughs. The hierarchy of the team was being shaken to its core. Some mechanics claimed something felt off in the way information was being shared between the two sides of the garage. Was Yamaha building a bike for the future, or were they building a bike specifically for Toprak? The political landscape of the team was shifting as fast as the bike on the track. The 2026 season wasn't just going to be a battle against Ducati, it was going to be an internal fight for the soul of the factory. Yet this was only the beginning of a far bigger storm. High performance always comes at a price. As Toprak pushed the V4 into the low 157s in Sepang, the first cracks began to show. Paddock insiders reported that the engine's thermal management was on the ragged edge. The V4, while powerful, was generating heat levels that threatened to bake the electronics and degrade the tire carcass prematurely. During one particular afternoon session, Toprak was recalled to the pits earlier than planned. The engineers were seen frantically covering the bike, shielding the cooling ducts from prying eyes. It was a reminder that the V4 was still a prototype, a fragile, volatile beast that could just as easily self-destruct as it could win a championship. The team had to decide, do they dial back the power to ensure finishing races, or do they keep the engine fully opened up and risk a catastrophic failure? It was a technical dispute that divided the garage, with some believing the risk was too high for a shakedown test. What happened after that left even his closest team members stunned. There is a shadow hanging over the 2026 season, the impending 850cc regulation change for 2027. Many wondered why Yamaha would invest millions into a 1000cc V4 now, only to have to downsize a year later. But according to rumors, the V4 project is a live-fire laboratory. The data Toprak is collecting today is being fed directly into the 2027 design office. By building the 1000cc V4, Yamaha is catching up on a decade of lost development in a single season. They aren't just racing for 2026, they are positioning themselves to dominate the next era of MotoGP. This Blue Shift plan involved a secret collaboration between Yamaha Japan and European aerodynamicists, a partnership that had previously been unthinkable. The V4 isn't just a bike, it's a statement of intent. Yamaha is no longer content with being the best of the rest. They are coming for the crown. The final day of testing provided the ultimate proof of concept. In a sport where a tenth of a second is an eternity, Toprak was consistently finding 3 or 4. The most unbelievable part, he didn't appear to be pushing. His riding style was calculated, mature, and almost eerily calm. He wasn't seeking sensationalism or glory laps for the media. He was reading the bike with surgical precision, providing feedback on the exact millisecond the rear tire began to lose grip. This technical maturity has turned Toprak into more than just a rider. He has become a technical catalyst that has accelerated Yamaha's development by months. As the sun began to set over the Mandalika circuit, the body language in the Yamaha garage spoke louder than any official statement. The faint smiles of the senior engineers, the longer-than-usual debriefs, and the decision to add extra runs for Toprak all pointed to one conclusion. They had exceeded their wildest targets. As the paddock packs up and heads toward the season opener, the hierarchy of MotoGP has been fundamentally altered. For the first time in years, Yamaha does not appear to be chasing the shadow of Ducati or KTM. They are creating their own benchmark. The Turk has proven that the transition from superbikes to MotoGP isn't just possible, it can be revolutionary. But the road ahead is still fraught with danger. The V4 is a new weapon, and like all new weapons, it is unpredictable. The 2026 season will be a test of mental pressure, mechanical endurance, and political navigation. Marc Marquez, Francesco Bagnaia, and Jorge Martin are no longer just looking at each other. They are looking at the blue garage. They are looking at the telemetry spikes that shouldn't exist. And they are wondering if the era of V4 dominance has finally found its most dangerous challenger. The shakedown test is over, but the echoes of the V4's roar still linger in the humidity of Sepang. Yamaha has chosen to remain quiet in public, making no big claims and offering no over-the-top celebrations. They know that a test is not a race and a lap record is not a trophy. But the silence in the paddock is different now. It's the silence of a rival who has been caught off guard. Toprak Razgatlıoğlu sits in the back of the garage, his silhouette framed by the monitors that showed his impossible times. He knows the weight of the expectations now resting on his shoulders. He wasn't just fighting his rivals this week. He was fighting the history of a factory and the skepticism of a world. And as the 2026 season approaches, one question remains. What will happen when Yamaha finally decides to open the engine all the way up? The answer might just redefine the sport forever.